Welcome to But Are There Dragons, a podcast where two friends pick a book at least one of them has not read and work their way through it a few chapters at a time. I'm your host, Kritter.
And I'm your host, Jess.
And we're continuing this adventure with The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien, with me as the resident Lord of the Rings veteran.
And me as the Tolkien first-timer.
In this, our 6th episode of Season 3, we're going to discuss Book 4, Chapters 3 through 5. Before we dive in, Jessica, what's new with you? How are you feeling?
Good. Summer is pretty much here and all that entails. So ready to hop into it. How about you?
Is where you are there cicadas?
There are not cicadas, but I haven't been here very long, and I keep meaning to ask if cicadas might come here.
Uh-huh.
I kind of need to find out.
Well, if they're on the same calendar schedule as the cicadas where I am, which is St. Louis, they're on their way out. We hit peak cicada probably about a week ago. It has been wild. They're still everywhere, but
so do they go east, west, wherever the heck they want?
It's my understanding that they just like emerge around the same time and then they go away after like 4 or 5 weeks. Obviously, I am not what is the word? I'm not
botanist.
No.
No.
What? I know the word.
Entomologist? Bugs,
maybe.
Right? Entomologist?
Yeah, bugs. It might be entomologist. That one's gonna make me mad that I can't think of it, but you might be right. Yeah. Either way, let us know in the comments if we're wrong. I'm definitely gonna look it up after this, but I'm no bug expert, and it might depend on the climate, right? It might depend on longitude, latitude situation, because from what I understand, they like to come out during the best time of the year, and by golly, they have. Like, we are having absolutely beautiful weather, tainted by these gosh dang cicadas.
Yeah.
And thankfully they're almost, I think, like they're sloping downwards. So by the time, dear listener, you hear this, hopefully they will be just on their way out almost completely, because man, they like to ruin garden parties.
I saw some pictures that I looked at and I went, that's a nope. That's what that is. That's a classic nope. Because the person had like their glass sliding door and all of the mason work and the walkway and this really beautiful cultivated backyard. And it was just a wall of insects. And even in a still, I could feel them moving. They were touching me. Yeah. It was not okay.
And the thing is they're so dumb that when they fly, they don't have like a sense of where they're going. So they're just as likely to avoid you as they are to hit you. Like, some bugs are like, I'm going to steer clear. Not cicadas. They're like June bugs, just dumb, meaning no thoughts, just vibes. So I guess you didn't have them whenever you lived in New England?
I don't recall ever having them. And I always just kind of chalked it up to, it's the nice days are a little bit fewer.
Yeah.
That nice. But where I am now in Ohio, like we just had a really nice swath of great weather, like you just mentioned. Even today, it was a little bit cooler. So fingers crossed.
I think you're probably fine.
I dodged it.
They haven't showed up. Yeah, I know somebody from Wisconsin who had never seen them before either, but having grown up in Missouri, this is my 3rd big wave that I have lived through.
The way you describe them, though, is just like they emerge and they do their time and then they go back. Sounds like something from Supernatural.
Yeah. No, we joke that they're like aliens. They are the most alien species I can think of on this planet. Like other than the ones that are like the deep dark things.
Deep dark ocean.
Yeah, in the deep dark ocean
has some weird stuff.
Can't describe. I can't relate. Can't speak to that. But think about it. Like, they're bugs, but they come out in a specific schedule, like every 13 years or every 17 years. And the way they do it is they come up out of the ground. Like, have you read Ender's Game? I don't know. They just remind me of the bugs in Ender's Game. Like, because they just, like, they tunnel.
But I swear to God, there was a Supernatural episode with that, too. And I think they were, in fact, aliens. So,
yes! And then they do their thing, and then they lay eggs in the trees, and then I guess the larvae like work their way into the ground again, and then they 13 years later they come back. Anyway, so yeah. Ugh. This is my life.
This will never
It's
be
fine.
Jess and Critter's bug hour. This will
No.
never.
Sorry. Wow, we've talked about them forever. So if you we can definitely start talking about the book. If you are experiencing cicadas, just know that I can sympathize. This is, as I said, my third wave of them, which doesn't make actual sense to me now that I'm thinking. I guess like the 17, they like overlap weird. I think there's more than 13 and 17 because yeah, I couldn't have witnessed 13-year batches. I'm not of that age just yet. So anyways, but I know I've witnessed like one wave I witnessed as a child, one wave I witnessed in college, and now I've got this one. So whatever, it's fine.
Did you go to college out of state? Maybe you were impacted by a different.
I think I was impacted by a different wave. I just can't I just know there's a 13-year and a 17-year, and I can't remember like what another
Increment?
Yeah, another increment. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. We've talked about cicadas for 5 minutes. So I think we can move on. All I just want to say is like I sympathize with anybody who's experiencing the cicadas. I hate them probably just as much as you do, unless you like them, in which case why? Unless you just like how, you know, they apparently create a birthing boon for like species in areas that the cicadas happen, you know?
Okay.
So that's good for the environment, but I'm still not a fan. And we're going to move on now.
Okay.
Okay, great. Book 4, Chapter 3, The Black Gate is Closed. Sam, Frodo, and Gollum make it to the main and presumed only entrance into Mordor, and the gates are very, very much guarded. Frodo intends to continue, though, as he has a quest that he intends to see through. Gollum begs him not to, suggests he give the ring back to him and leave, and eventually suggests that they go another way. What would you have done in Frodo's shoes?
I don't know. I thought that it was incredibly sly of Gollum to suggest that he give it back to him. Because depending on how much Frodo is struggling with the burden of his quest, that could have worked. So in that moment, I was like, that is incredibly clever. I don't know. I honestly don't know what I have done. I am not particularly clever, I don't feel. So faced with an obstacle like that, how would I go around? And until we get to the point where Smeagol starts hinting that there might be another way in. And that's where I took a turn kind of right along in lockstep with Frodo. Frodo got very sick of Smeagol's bull really fast. Like he just wasn't answering direct questions. Is the way guarded or not? You know, it's the next best viable option for him, and he needs real information. And Smeagol is what is the word when you're just being so evasive? Smeagol's being incredibly evasive.
Yeah, evasive is a good word. It describes it perfectly. So yeah, it really raised my hackles immediately when Smeagol just slipped in, like, just give it back to me. And I'm like, excuse me? And then Frodo did chime in pretty harshly with Gollum for suggesting that he give him the ring, telling him he will never get it back and that he is bound by Frodo's commands, which could end up being to leap from a precipice or cast himself into flames. Like, that was kind of oof. So this is met with great approval from Sam, who absolutely hates Gollum. And he thinks to himself, Sam does, that Frodo is the wisest being to ever live, except maybe for Gandalf and Bilbo. Do you have any more thoughts about this, like, Frodo turning a corner on Gollum and all of that?
I think that it shows the progression. You know, I feel like the ring, I don't know, there's nothing in the book that this is substantiated on. This is just pure vibes. I feel like the weight of the ring takes a greater toll on them where they are, and so it's making him less patient.
Yeah.
You start adding in those contributing factors of Frodo's already essentially decided that this is a one-way ticket. Frodo knows that this is, you know, this that this is going to be his doom, but ultimately he has to do the thing and see it done. And well, if there's nothing for it, then might as well get to it and get it done and, stay the course and see it through.
Yeah.
The other thing is in this part, so Sam's inner monologue has nicknamed the two sides of Smeagol as Slinker and Stinker, which again, name calling, but okay.
Yeah.
And there's also some dialogue in there from the narrator telling us that, and I'm paraphrasing this, Sam is saying it's a good thing Smeagol didn't know their true plan, otherwise he would be putting up more of a fight. And that kind of stuck out to me because Frodo made that comment that I think you commented on in a previous episode about, Frodo saying to Smeagol, you know where we're going.
Yeah.
So if Frodo's living under the assumption that Smeagol knows their mission.
Yeah. There's a difference between knowing the mission and knowing where they're going. Because Smeagol also he made several comments like, I could just hand you over to some orcs. They'll take you there. He said that several times as if like Frodo is heading to Mordor because he's, as if Sauron has put him on his strings and is pulling him towards him, right?
Sure. I guess that I didn't even think of that, right? Like he could be going to Mordor at Sauron's request and going willingly.
Right.
To be a bad guy.
That too, though, distresses him. I feel like he mentions like we can't get it back. Like if he gets it back, then he'll eat the world or something. It was such a weird way to phrase it, but even if he either way, he would be distressed. And so part of me is like, has he just not thought about it that hard? Or is he just in a tough spot and wants to be near the ring, and so he's just going to guide them as long as he can until he can steal it, basically?
I feel like he's going to do whatever it takes because he's biding his time until he has an opportunity to grab the ring.
Yeah, that's what it feels like to me, too. So if he didn't know...
The other thing of that is that Smeagol was... as Frodo's giving Smeagol the business, Sam's internal monologue is saying how impressed he is, but he's also a little shocked, right? Like he's not seen Frodo take that tone or treat anybody in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just thought that was noteworthy too.
For sure. And I think you're onto something with Frodo might just be like losing patience and becoming like shorter of temper the closer he gets. And that the burden is probably like weighing him down further and further. But I don't think that is, as he showed, ever going to be like cause him to give up the ring. Just be like, I don't want it anymore, right? Because he's still, even if he hates it, even if he feels burdened by his task and the ring, he's still under the influence of the ring, even if he's more immune to it than, say, Smeagol is.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of stuff that he's battling with right now, and I really feel for him for that. So Frodo's going to make this final call where we're going, where's the next step. And as he's thinking, Sam witnesses 4 great flying beasts far above. More Nazgul, are we tallying them this time? Did you tally?
I wrote it down. I was like, winged beast sighting.
Okay. 4, count it.
4 of them.
So men from the south continue trickling into Mordor. This has been happening this chapter, not far from where the party is hiding. And Sam asks if they have olifants with them. When Gollum doesn't know what those are, Sam trots out a little rhyme that makes it clear that olifants are just big elephants. Which delights Frodo and rouses him enough to make the decision to go with Gollum to another location. Did you enjoy the Oliphant talk and the rhyme?
I did. I loved the idea of the Oliphants and that Sam is interested in seeing them. I love the rhyme. It definitely made me think of Treebeard and their rhymes to remember species and things.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of what that put me in mind for. And I absolutely caught myself in the moment kind of just hoping that Sam gets to see an Oliphant.
Yeah, it gave me, whenever he was so excited to see the elves, like in Fellowship, I guess. Yeah, it had to have been in Fellowship. It kind of gave me that, but he's seen elves now and he loved it, had an amazing time, and now that this is like the next step up. Elves first, Oliphant's next.
Yeah, and it's a throwback to that whimsical side of, the childlike joy of, this is a thing that I have read about and I'm very interested in, and just that pure curiosity, untarnished by, where they are and the gravity of the situation. So it's nice to see that whimsy kind of burble up to the surface.
Yeah, almost aided by where they are, right? Because he was bound to the Shire. Never left, right? Hadn't seen elves, hadn't seen anything. And now that he's on this adventure, however terrible, at least he's got these little glimmers of hope. Maybe I'll see elves. Maybe I'll get an amazing rope. Maybe I'll find, something to eat that isn't lembas bread. Maybe I'll see some Oliphants, right? He's got so much, I don't know.
Yeah.
I love that he's maintained some degree of hope and curiosity amidst bad, terrible things all around him. Okay, well, that is the end of that chapter. Did you have any final thoughts or other notes before we move on?
Just that Gollum had pointed out some things about Sauron's perspective, that Sauron does not expect an attack from the south, and that he shares that Sauron can't see everywhere all at once, at least not yet. Properly menacing. And I think even Frodo comments about how much insight he seemingly has into Sauron. But just thought it was noteworthy to point out that a southerly approach apparently is a safe way to approach, because Sauron won't expect an attack from that direction.
Yeah.
And then Gollum said I. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gollum said I. So at some point, things got heated, and Gollum didn't refer to himself as Gollum, didn't refer to himself as Smeagol, referred to himself in the first person, which I believe is the first time in any of the reading that I have seen him do so. I don't think that I have. So I saw it in the moment, and then immediately, I think Frodo calls it out, or Sam, somebody's internal dialogue comments on it immediately as it's happening. So that was definitely a standout moment.
Yeah, I think it was, I can't remember exactly the situation, but I remember it was Smeagol was getting like defensive about something, and Frodo was like, well, he must be telling the truth, because in his fit of rage or whatever, he used the first person instead of his like silly whatever names. So yeah, that was definitely notable, and it might have been the first time. I don't remember it happening before.
I really don't think it has. Somebody can prove me wrong if somebody has, the chops to go through and find it, but I don't recall in any of the dialogue in the cave, even throwing back to The Hobbit, I don't think he referred to himself in the first person at any point.
Fascinating. Okay. Book 4, Chapter 4 of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit. So, speaking of Gollum, we keep getting this pale green light showing up in Gollum's eyes, like a flash of it. At the beginning of this chapter, it's when Gollum is talking about maybe finally getting something to eat. Do you read into the green light in Gollum's eyes at all? What are you thinking is happening with the green light?
I hadn't, but now I feel like maybe I should have been.
I just noticed it. It's been happening this whole book.
His eyes are so big and so luminous anyways, by description. The green glint is definitely only commented on in certain instances. To your point, I wonder if he's, going to get to a point where he's desperately hungry and things will get tense, more tense.
I feel like I've only noticed it, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I notice it, and it shows up. And when it shows up, I immediately think, okay, this is evil Gollum, right? So like, what could he possibly be thinking? And at this point, he's like, maybe I'll finally get something to eat. In my brain, I was like, oh God, he's talking about Frodo and Sam. And before, like, he would, he'd be like, I'm good, whatever. And then Sam would say something to like insult him. And then there would be a green light. So I'm just like, is that him being like, murder Gollum? Like, is that the signal, the green light? Like, that's just
possibly.
I would just keep an eye keep an eye on it.
I see what you did there.
Because that is what I'm getting from it. That's yeah. So I don't know. Just take a look. Just keep an eye on it. All right, so the party enters a relatively pleasant country, which surprised me, though it's still, of course, in enemy territory. Sam asks Gollum to find them some food, and Frodo takes a nap. As he does, Sam admires him, noting that he seems to have a light shining from within, and also murmuring, "I love him." Are you still thinking bromance here? What kind of love is this, do you think?
So I don't know. Honestly, I think that whether it's platonic love or romantic love, either way, it's a very tender moment.
Yeah.
And I honestly had chalked it all up to bromance to this point, but I did walk away going, maybe he really was writing something from that perspective. I think it could play either way very easily.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I feel like in this case, intent might be one thing, but the way that the reader interprets it to me, because it could so validly be interpreted as a bromance or as something more romantic, just based on these like extremely tender moments between them, right? I love a lot of my friends, right? But I would never watch them sleeping and just be like, I love them. You know what I mean? Like, my gosh.
But you're also not going through the perilous experience that they're going through, not to take away. And I have friends that I platonically tell them that I love them. You know, they're absolutely people that I have that level of closeness with, that there's nothing romantic in the relationship. But I also don't think I would necessarily be sitting there watching them sleep. But who knows in these very dire times what it might come out to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It could really go either way. I think whatever it is, you're right, is incredibly tender. And I kind of love that. Either way, I like if it's a bromance, just that tender, love that representation for like, awesome friendships.
Just to take a moment and I can't speak to it because it's not anything that I've looked for from storytelling, but something that is this old, having those moments that in a positive light show this kind of male intimacy, whether it's romantic or not.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say there wasn't a lot of that represented on the page in a positive manner. So whether it's platonic or romantic, it's positive male intimacy, and I'm sure there was a huge lack of it.
Yeah. So either way, definitely here for it.
Yeah.
It is sweet. It is really sweet.
It is very sweet. But this is the first time where I was like, maybe I've been undershooting it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is beyond the bromance.
Yeah. I think a moment in Rivendell also kind of made me like, this is pretty tender, if I'm remembering right. But granted, he thought Frodo was going to die. So like, maybe a reason to be a little more tender. Either way, love it either way. Just if you listener want to weigh in, do you think this is reading to you more bromance or romance? Let us know in the comments or on Discord. Okay, so Gollum brings back some rabbits, and Sam sets in to make Frodo some stew. In this exchange between Gollum and Sam, we finally get one of the most quoted lines for my family from the movies. Taters? What's taters, precious? And potatoes. Though, boil 'em, mash 'em, stick 'em in a stew seems to be an invention strictly for the movies. Do you and yours have any oft-quoted lines from Lord of the Rings?
So we say potatoes all the time. And so I highlighted that with little, LOLs, and then Gaffer's Delight. So, that was like his dad's favorite dish. So I thought that was even more endearing. So I think the potatoes is probably the most quoted. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any other movie quotes, and I'm drawing a blank.
No
I'm
worries,
having a
no
really
worries.
hard time. I was having a conversation over dinner with Mr. Jessica about who died and who lived in which movie. And he was kind of picking on me. He's like, "You're killing off a lot of people who didn't die in the movie." And I'm like, "Didn't they? I don't know. It's fine."
Oh yeah, there's a lot for me, honestly. We already talked about the Gimli,
Mhm.
very dangerous over short distances. That one for sure for me because it applies. And there's actually one that I've got later on in my outline that I'll point out. So we can
I
circle
would
back to this.
love if anybody in your family is willing to participate and you made a montage of the Kritter family favorite LOTR moments.
Okay.
I think
That's
that would make a hell of a TikTok because I do know that some of your family has done cameos for cupcakes and stuff. So
They have, and like favorite characters and whatnot. They've done. That's a good idea. Well, I'll definitely be seeing them probably over Father's Day. So, keep
just
that
gonna
one
put
in
it out
mind.
there.
Okay, favorite Lord of the Rings moments. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so they eat the stew, but Sam forgot to put the fire out, silly Sam, and it started smoking, attracting some unwanted visitors. Faramir of Gondor and his men.
Yes.
At first, the men couldn't figure out exactly what Sam and Frodo were. Any thoughts about this first meeting?
I thought that it was great. There were two things about them meeting that immediately stood out to me. One is that Frodo admits that Gollum is under his care. Frodo essentially kind of tangentially takes ownership of Gollum. You know, they comment on seeing him lurking about and, you know, he's recently met, but he is under my care. And I thought that I feel like it could be interpreted more than one way, right? Like he's not taking ownership or responsibility for Gollum's behaviors, but by framing it that way, that he's under my care, there is a little bit of a protective slant to it in my mind. And I find that endearing.
Yeah.
So it's, again, the naivety, right? The fact that you think that Gollum needs protecting and that you would even do it because nobody else would, because, you know, as we've seen, folks who know him for more than 5 minutes think he should be put down or whatever. So I think that it was kind of a noble approach from Frodo, for sure.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is to hear Faramir's men talk about him as though he is charmed. Fate has spares him for some other end. And I was like, oh, that's properly ominous. Hopefully it's not overshadow or anything too serious.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of reminded me of like characters from other books, right? That just have this like thing about them where they're just really lucky for whatever reason. Which is interesting because they didn't really bring that up about him in the movies at all. And like so far, even in just this initial meeting, he does feel different to me than he does in the movies. Would you agree with that?
I do. And I know a few folks who I think Faramir was their least favorite part of the Peter Jackson interpretation. I've heard some things for some folks that, for example, Faramir was one of their favorite book characters, and they felt that Peter Jackson did him dirty.
Yeah, having been reminded of him, I wouldn't say that that's wrong. You know, now that I, you know, because again, it's been 20 years. Of course, I've been corrupted by the movies because I've watched them so many times. I had forgotten about all that Faramir can be, which we'll talk about further. But like, yeah, he's a different character in the book than the movie.
So I'll be interested because I can honestly say Faramir, I kind of nothinged him in the movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe that's the crux of the "you did him dirty" was that he was kind of underplayed.
Definitely.
But we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. One thing that stood out to me from this initial meeting was when they're trying to figure out what the hobbits are. They're like, they can't be elves. Elves are supposed to be wondrous fair to look upon. And Sam's like, really? Basically,
I can hear you. I'm standing right here.
it stung a little. I felt that on behalf of the hobbits. Like, why you gotta come for me like that? I mean, is it true? Sure, absolutely, but you don't have to say it. Like, sad. Okay, so Sam and Frodo witness after they meet the men. Faramir leaves Mablung and Damrod with Frodo and Sam, while the rest of his men go to fight some men from the south who were like coming through that area. And Sam and Frodo witness for the first time a battle of men against men, something they do not like one bit. An enemy falls near them, and Sam wonders what his name was, where he came from, and if he was really evil at heart, or what lies or threats got him to go on the march when he might have preferred to stay home in peace. Now, I feel like this little passage somewhat redeems Tolkien's othering of the bad guys by giving them dark skin and hair, and in previous descriptions, slanted eyes. Although that might have been the orcs, the slanted
that
eyes.
was
Now that I'm
orcs.
thinking of it.
But still, the orcs are classified as evil.
Right.
Anyways.
But as far as like the dark skin and stuff, he's suggesting these people aren't in fact evil. At least that's the suggestion that I'm getting. Even if they're different, they're just products of their circumstances and the influences around them. Probably like the people Tolkien himself fought against in World War I. That's my reading. Did you read anything into these like thoughts Sam was having?
I did, but I didn't go at it from that angle. But I do think that that's highly relatable, and I do, even though we know and have covered multiple times that he doesn't believe in allegory. I could absolutely see the parallels between you're an enlisted man fighting another enlisted man who is literally following orders. You know, it's not even necessarily that that's your belief structure. You are doing as you're told. And so I do feel that that comes from a brothers in arms perspective.
Yeah.
And like I said, hadn't really thought of it, but I do like your point that it does humanize them more. So hopefully that helps on that count a little bit. I was looking at it from, is this the first time that Sam is seeing a creature he finds sympathetic dying immediately in front of him? So, and that, I'm like, I can work through it a little bit, but so they were attacked by just orcs or orcs and men at the end of the Fellowship?
I thought it was just orcs.
So I'm wondering if this is the first time he's seeing a sympathetic character, you know, tabling the problems with the perceptions on the orc.
Yeah.
You know, a human is a human and he's made friends with humans. And so for him to see a man and perceive him as a man and realize, and there's a really cool word for that when you look at a person and you realize in that moment that they have an entire lived experience that you know nothing about. Thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome.
like, there's a fancy word for it. I should have looked it up.
I love that word. Yeah.
Sonder. It's a great word.
Yeah.
And so I thought that, and also again, a really relatable thing where something happens in front of you and makes you realize that that person has a whole experience that you know nothing about, and it just suddenly ended in front of you.
Yeah. It was
so that's where I went in my mind on that journey.
No, I think that's definitely a part of it. It was this didn't really come up in the movies, right? Like they did the little raid on the Southerners, but it wasn't, Sam didn't have any sort of existential moment in there. It just, he was excited about the Oliphants and the bad guys died, and that was that. This painted it in much more gray tones than the movie paints, because the movie's very black and white, bad guys, good guys, right?
Yep.
This made you, it makes you think, you know, if you take a second, not everyone who's engaging in stuff like this, wars, whatever, would do it if they were given the choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't want to hurt other people. They would just want to stay home in peace. So it's kind of it's I don't know. It's Tolkien doesn't like allegory, but I think he was like, no, this is something we should think about whenever we're engaging in any sort of conflict.
Or even just subconsciously processing that part of the experience, you know?
Right.
You don't ever know what brought the other person to their side of the engagement. They could just have done it so that there was food on the table. You just never know. And you can go your whole life, you know, just having friends and family members who are soldiers. You know, you can go your whole life and you'll never get that answer.
Right.
You won't. You'll never know.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, a mind twist.
For sure. Yeah. Well, on top of that, Sam also witnesses something less disturbing, far more exciting, an Oliphant. So we find out, thanks to the narrators, that these things are way bigger than elephants. Than the Oliphants that are still on Middle Earth elephants.
Mm-hmm.
And just like massive things, but they're clearly just gigantic elephants. How happy for Sam were you that he got to see one?
Ridiculous. Just as hyped when he met the elves.
Yeah.
Right. Like just the same level of squee of just, yay, he got it. And nobody died, you know, like, because these things sound humongous. And if they were coming right at you, it sounds like it could be pretty treacherous. So,
yeah, it seemed like it was a pretty close call. There was like a stray one that just kind of like veered off into the countryside and was never heard from again. That was pretty funny. Like, who knows what happened to him? He's just off somewhere. So the Sam sees an Oliphant and then settles in for a nap. Mission accomplished, basically, I guess. He told the guards that they're free to continue on without them once Faramir gets back. I personally love that he doesn't think he's a captive, despite the circumstances. He's like, you guys go ahead. Like, don't wake me up. I'll be fine. And that's it for the chapter. Any final thoughts about that one?
I had a couple. So at the start of the chapter, I had a little bit of literary umami. And to your point, it was a pretty landscape, not yucky landscape.
Yep.
Describing Ithilien, which is the part of the countryside that they're in. It is described as open to the southern airs and the moist winds from the sea far away. Many great trees grew there, planted long ago, falling into untended age amid a riot of careless descendants. And I just was like, it's just such a great description.
Yeah.
You know, could have said, you know, a bunch of old trees surrounded by younger trees, but a riot of careless descendants. Just
perfect. Perfection. Awesome. So good.
Yes, chef kiss. And then the fact that the narrator takes the time to point out that Sam is a good cook, even by Hobbit reckoning. I was like, heck yeah, he is. So I got a good little belly chuckle out of that, because of course he is.
Well, and when he's giving Gollum the instructions of like, go get this, go get that. Don't bother looking for potatoes. They're not in season. Like, he also flexed his gardener muscles a little bit, right? Because he knew what would be in season, what wouldn't be in season. So yeah, good cook, good gardener. He's got it all, basically.
And I do think that that's a good segue into, I feel like this is a good chapter that's relatively low action, but does point out Sam has definitely gotten sassier.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to sit here and compliment Frodo, really kind of coming into himself, Aragorn, feeling his oats, all of those things. This is a really good time to point out that Sam has also come into his own quite a bit and has opinions and gives them. And
enlists Gollum for chores.
Yes.
You know, like he never would have done that.
Tells the guards that you can just leave us behind. Don't worry about us.
Yeah, we'll be fine.
Yeah, I think that it's a great coming into his own power moment. So I just thought I'd take a time out and point that out.
Definitely worthy pointing out. Okay.
And that's all that I had for chapter 4.
Alrighty, book 4, chapter 5, The Window on the West. Faramir grills Frodo about Isildur's Bane, which, if you'll recall, he had the same kind of dream, vision, whatever, that Boromir had, that had the rhyme that included Isildur's Bane and the halflings. And he also grills him about Boromir. And while Frodo resists giving any details about the ring, he's shocked to learn from Faramir that Boromir had passed. Boromir's funeral boat had made its way to Faramir near Osgiliath and silently floated past him toward the sea. The way it was described, glowing with a pale light, boat almost filled with water, made it almost seem, to me, like a vision rather than the real thing. Do you think this was really Boromir?
I do. I had chalked it up to the same inherent magical imbuement like we saw with the rope into the elvish boats. Also, I caught myself wondering, because in my mind, Galadriel is quite an all-powerful being in her own right. I'm like, is there any chance that she's aware? And because even by Faramir's reckoning, there shouldn't be a reasonable path from where that happened to where Faramir saw it, that the boat would still be holding water and all that.
I mean, over Rauros, if nothing else, like a giant waterfall.
Yes.
But yeah.
So I couldn't help but think that there's some natural magic that was imbued into the boats because they are of elvish build. And then I do kind of just sit in the back going, maybe Galadriel gave it like just a little oomph, with whatever her super cool powers are, to make sure that it makes it to Faramir. And then Faramir's mentioning, tidings of death have many wings. Night oft brings news to near kindred, 'tis said. Boromir was my brother. Just another one of those. Aragorn gets a lot of those moments. This is another person who is so well spoken that it just kind of jumped off the page at me.
Beautifully said. Yeah. And honestly, the way it was described, and Frodo's skepticism about it made me think twice, right? Because I thought it was just Boromir had made his way down the river, whatever. And then Frodo was like, I'm not sure that actually,
happened.
That was actually there. But whether it was or not, Boromir's cloven horn made its way back to Gondor, solidifying his demise in their minds. But now I kind of love your idea that like it was the magic of the elves and the boat kind of imbuing or whatever, like kind of just embalming him there and carrying him the way that he needed to go, however Faramir said it, right? Like in order to send the tidings to his near kin. And now I kind of prefer that, actually, that it was him and that he continued to the sea.
Galadriel's had enough mention, even though she's been such a small sliver, where she seems to be in the know in to a certain extent, didn't believe that Gandalf was actually dead, just couldn't see his fate, and a few other things she knew to send out for them when they were in need. Just Galadriel seems to have a higher level understanding. She's living at a different elevation. And so it suits my headcanon that she gave it a little nudge.
I love that, actually. So in their conversations, Faramir decides he more or less trusts Frodo and notes an elvish air about him. Let's remember that Frodo was named Elf Friend. Faramir's still not quite sure what to do about him, though, so decides to bring the two along with his company for the time being. When they have a little bit more privacy, he apologizes for discussing openly that which should probably remain a secret, Isildur's Bane. He's got some pretty strong theories about what it might be and some pretty strong words about not wanting it for himself. How are you feeling about Faramir after this more private conversation?
I want to believe. So he's saying the right things. He's not the first person to say the right things, but I very much want to believe. The thing that I had at this point, the Faramir-Frodo interaction back and forth was tight. It was very good to read. They were very well matched. At no point, even though Faramir admits that he was kind of coming at him hard, I felt like Frodo really did a great job holding his own. The whole interaction was fantastic, filled with tension, but didn't feel unbalanced. So what I walked out of, at least to this part, was I was like, he's very, very well informed, even for somebody who functions essentially as a prince.
Yeah.
You know, he knew a heck of a lot more than Boromir did, for sure. And Boromir, by my understanding, at least to this point, is a very favored child.
Yeah.
You know, Faramir reads very much as a second son.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, to this point, based on what I know so far. So he seems remarkably well informed compared to his brother.
Yeah. He's you know,
and he's putting it together. Like he's got wheels turning mid conversation.
As a second child, I am happy to claim Faramir. Let me just put it that way. Like,
and I don't mean it as slander, but I do, you know, in these patriarchal societies, being a second son comes with a certain reputation.
True.
And usually not as much access as favored first sons. It's kind of just implied.
Yeah. Yeah. But it does seem like he has taken his lack of favor and kind of flown beneath the radar and pursued his own, you know, information and has kind of hit really close to the actual mark, which is great. And part of that, I like, if I remember, he mentions, what did they call Gandalf? There was a word for it.
Mithrandil.
No, but it was like the
Gray Pilgrim.
The Gray Pilgrim. I love that.
Definitely we've seen in writing before. I'd have to go back through my highlights and find it, but it stood out because I was like, we've heard him called that before. I just can't remember by who. It might have been Galadriel, but I'm not 100% sure. But it exists in my highlights somewhere.
Okay. All right. Well, I nothinged it the first time, and this time I was like, oh, Faramir admires Gandalf, I guess, so, which is good. And he seems to admire the elves. And so there's just a lot of things about Faramir this whole time that I was like, yes, like I do want to believe you. You like everything you're saying is the right thing, which of course, like, should get my guard up because, you know, silver tongues, like, look at Saruman, they're not always the best thing, but he just seems so sincere, even like this far in. So Frodo and Sam eventually have to get blindfolded as the location Faramir was taking them was secret. When they get there, they are met with a beautiful sight at the entrance. A thin waterfall, is what I gathered it was, of water reflecting beautiful colors in the sunset. Have you seen a waterfall do this before?
No, I've actually never seen a waterfall in person. It makes me want to, though.
What?
That's not true. I've seen one in New Hampshire. But it wasn't like that. They're shorter. We don't have anything that tall around here.
That is wild.
Around there. I'm like, I don't know where I am anymore.
You gotta, so, like, pro tip, as somebody who loves to hike, there are pros and cons for using the All Trails app, but one of the pros is that you can put things that you're looking for, and you can, and like in the, you know, when you're searching for a trail that you're going to hike on, and one of the things you can do is search for a trail with a waterfall. So do that. There's beautiful waterfalls in Rocky Mountain National Park if you get out to Colorado. I have seen the rainbow effect in Iceland. There are tons of waterfalls, just absolutely stunning waterfalls in Iceland. And I think there's a big waterfall at Yosemite, and I'm pretty sure it does it too at a certain time of the day. And so, like, of course, all the Instagrammers are there, like, for that particular moment.
Sure.
And I like hesitate to believe that's where Tolkien got the idea from, but that one's like famous now at the very least. I'm sure there's something like that where he's from too, but yeah, I would you gotta seek out some waterfalls, man. They're
we've
great.
Already earmarked a few state parks in Ohio. I'm definitely a state park girly. I do like to hike. I do have to do lower impact hikes than I used to. Hiking
All trails will help you search for that too. Like,
yes,
you know.
So I will definitely look into that. Thank you.
You should. You're welcome. Anyways, yeah, big fan of whenever waterfalls have rainbows is what I'm saying, basically. And once they got into this little stronghold, one scout reported having seen a small, dark creature swiftly climbing a tree, which Sam immediately recognized as Gollum. He also thought he saw Gollum following them previously, but didn't say anything to the guards, thinking it would be better if no one had to think of him. Would you have done the same?
No, I would have called it out. I felt like that was a little out of character. Well, I don't know, because again, he's just so sour on Gollum.
Yeah.
So I guess I can't really be surprised, but I was like, why wouldn't you say something?
With as sour on Gollum that he is, I would have expected him to snitch.
Yes.
But the reasoning that he gave, basically just like, I don't ever want to think of him. Why would I want somebody else to have to?
Yeah.
It also made sense, but at the same time, like, Gollum's still out there. Like, you're basically letting him be free by doing what you're doing, which is not very Sam.
But also you get the respite, have the
Without
moments without him.
True. So it could really go either way, whether it was in character or out of character. I was surprised because I wouldn't have done it that way, but I get why he did it the way he did it. It was just kind of weird.
Yeah.
But we know that Gollum is following them, more or less, is the moral of that story. So Faramir and his men, along with Frodo and Sam, sat down for a meal together, but before they ate, they all turned to the west for a moment of silence. They looked to Numenor that was, and beyond to Elvenhome that is, and to that which is beyond Elvenhome and will ever be. This to me had extreme religion vibes. How did it hit for you?
Confusing.
Okay.
So we have references to Numenor of old, and I think I wrote in my notes, like, where is Elvenhome? Like, just okay. I think that's the first time that I'm introduced to that concept of Elvenhome.
Yeah.
I'm kind of left implying that perhaps it is the mythical place that the elves migrated from and potentially are migrating back to, but I don't actually know that.
Okay.
And why do the children of men care so much about Elvenhome? But okay.
It's a good point. Okay. Yeah. So to me, the moment I heard it, I thought, first of all, this feels like obscure references that somebody who's casually reading would have no concept of, which now
can confirm.
But so, like in Catholicism, reminder that Tolkien was Catholic, there is a prayer that ends, as it was in the beginning, is now and ever shall be, world without end. So like and will ever be, and now and ever shall be, it just felt like almost heavenly, like afterlife or God adjacent to me. Which I like. I know that the men of Gondor descended from Numenorians, and so I can see that they're like attached to them, and there's some relationship there with elves, but again, it is very much like, why? Where did this come from? Nobody else is doing this.
And it's done with such gravitas. Like, there's clear emphasis placed on it. Just no real context to speak of. Just we feel so strongly about this that we're going to stop. It's like somebody breaking out into prayer before Thanksgiving dinner at a house where you've never heard a prayer given before. Like,
that's exactly.
You got the turkey already in your mouth, and you're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and you're just casually putting your fork down.
Right. That's exactly.
Kind of feels like that.
Yeah, and that's how it hit me. Here I am reading the book, just like, what? Like, it's a pre-meal prayer. Okay, that's a first, but okay. Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Anyway, so speaking of Numenor, we get a little history of men from Faramir after the meal. He seemed to have no real fondness for like pure Numenorians who fell into evils and folly and seemed more obsessed with death and the past than life. And then after that came the stewards, who I guess I gather are more of like not just pure Numenor people, and they did better for themselves, forming an alliance with men from the north, the Rohirrim, who they allied with in battle, and ultimately ceded some land to, which became Rohan. So from all this history, did anything stand out to you?
The fact that there was an unofficial kind of caste system aside, like they were classifying high, middle, and low classes of men. So that was kind of strange, and it all seemed to be related to their origin. you know, so the Numenorians were of a higher class.
Yep.
Based on these entirely arbitrary standings. But okay.
From the people who descend from Numenorians.
Yeah. So like we're the bestest and there ain't nothing you can say about it.
Yeah.
But that's fine. So that stuck out to me. Also, talking about the Numenorians, there was a comment made in there about how they hungered after endless life unchanging, which apparently they had left behind. And I just wrote, what? So kind of like Elven Home, right? Kind of like our prayer pause. Just,
yeah.
What?
Were they immortal?
Are they zombies? What are you saying?
Yeah.
Were they zombies? What? Are there zombies in Lord of the Rings?
I mean, we did read about the Barrow Wights.
No spoilers. Yeah, true, we did.
So no spoilers. That was in The Hobbit. We've been there.
In The Hobbit.
Been there, done that. And
that
also
just kind of. Sorry.
No, it's okay. And the Nazgul too.
Yes,
they're giving zombie.
They are. Yeah. They can respawn at any save point.
Right. I will say though that like that's literally the note that I took was they think of themselves as the High or Men of the West because of their affiliation with Numenorians, and the Men of Rohan as middlemen or of the Twilight. Like gag, first of all. I don't love that. But then Faramir admitted that Gondor had more or less fallen in with the middlemen, like they had lost their luster.
So
which
that's
I
when it
loved.
got icky for me. So I was the opposite. I was
really
like, okay, high, middle, Twilight. Okay, I'm going to ride it out and see what happens. And because the way that he phrased it, I think was we have fallen to the class of middle or fallen to the class of Rohirrim, or the way that it was phrased indicated that he felt that it was a decline in stature. And that was where I was like, oh.
Okay, I guess
so it's really not any better than it sounded.
I read it as I'm not putting us on a pedestal anymore. Because like the way he looked at the Numenorians in the first place was like these guys weren't all they were cracked up to be. They fell into evil. They were not as wise. They didn't care about the present day.
I'm not going to put us on a pedestal anymore. But we used to be on a pedestal. So I feel like we're two parts of the same sentence.
Maybe. But I don't think he thinks that they were worthy of being on a pedestal, is what I'm saying. And he does mention to your point, he does mention that like part of being a middleman is valuing like battles and fighting and all of that stuff. Because he says like Boromir embodies that side of Gondor / Rohan, you know, or he did embody it, you know, the greater than any other man in his generation or whatever. But Faramir didn't seem to think that like the battles and stuff was the greatest thing either. So I don't know. I think to me, I like it when somebody isn't holding themselves above others. Even if the way they phrase it is, yeah, we've actually come down a notch from where we used to be. I still appreciated it because he just felt like he was more down to earth and not like all high and mighty, like Boromir kind of.
I agree. He does not come across that way. It was just, I was kind of hoping that you were going to redeem it there at the end, and but no, it really was as classist as it sounded. Okay. But I'm not holding his feet to the fire over it. I'm just that's how that set with me.
That's fair. I like how he really clearly knows Boromir, you know, which makes sense because they were brothers. But when he mentions the stewards and how they would never become kings and how that really dissatisfied Boromir, like how long do we have to be stewards until we can be kings? Boromir and Faramir are just two very different dudes, I think. Yeah. Faramir happy to not be a king or whatever, or be a prince, just be the second son of a steward. Boromir wasn't that way.
No.
From the
get-go. I think that it would show. I think that if you have somebody who is smart and perceptive, then they would be able to see seeds of that in their childhood. Yeah. So it just spoke to Faramir being very perceptive.
Yeah. So after Faramir took his turn talking about men and their history, Sam decided to chime in and got pretty worked up about the elves and Galadriel, and he ended up running his mouth about Boromir and the ring. How do you feel about how this went down?
I feel that it was a matter of time. I feel bad for Sam, because if it were me and I had let it slip, I would feel like absolute garbage. Yep. But I feel like it was going to happen one way or the other.
And it might as well happen with Sam a little tipsy, a little jazzed up about the elves.
His sass got ahead of him, and boy, is that relatable.
True. So in this exchange, I promised another quote that I use all the time, or I at least adopt to my own purposes. And in this case, it was a chance for Faramir, Captain of Gondor, to show his quality. So like, replace Faramir with any applicable name. Highly usable phrase. So you're about to give your cat medicine. A chance for Agni, Captain of Fluffiness, to show his quality. You're about to shoot the final shot in a game of horse. A chance for Kritter, Captain of Basketball, to show her quality. I use that too much. It's because a lot of people don't even know what the hell I'm talking about.
Right.
But it doesn't matter.
Inside jokes just for you is okay, because I do it all the time.
Yeah. I got told by a basketball teammate of mine in high school, coincidentally, that I talked different. Like that it was like, because I say stuff like this, right? Who says a chance for Kritter, Captain of Basketball, to show her quality? No one talks, like, especially in high school, because they're worried about like people thinking they're weird. I was not worried, or I didn't know enough to be worried.
I was walking around quoting Shakespeare, so you know.
That's fair. All right, so two different types of same vibes.
But very niche interests. I was passing notes written in runes, and I was quoting Shakespeare. So
perfect. So we all have our thing.
Right.
But that is another one of my quotes.
Yeah.
So Faramir did show his quality, though, standing by his earlier statement. Not if I found it on the highway, would I take it? So still, he's not taking the ring. He's trying to help. So for me, this man is getting up there with Aragorn in the dreaminess category. Personally, how are you feeling about him right now?
This was all very positive, right up to him saying, I don't even want to see it. I don't even, and I just was like, I have to take it. You know, he made a comment earlier in the chapter about, I would not snare even an orc with a falsehood. And I was like, okay, we'll wait and see.
And here we are.
And so by the end of the chapter, he has, in fact, completely won me over. Like, okay, he seems really legit.
Yeah,
he seems to really know his brother, including his flaws. And also, as he's talking about his brother, I thought that it was important to point out that he's pointing out his brother's flaws, for lack of a better word, without Boromir bashing. You know what I mean? Like, in a real way, as somebody who grew up with you would know you, without it being malicious.
It's just how it was. Like, that's who he was. No, not a bad thing. He was devoted to his people. He was a great warrior.
Yeah.
And so one example of his dreaminess, Frodo caught a swaying Frodo and carried him to bed, tucked him in, and then he exchanged compliments with Sam, calling him Master Samwise. Master. Like, you know how many times Sam has called Frodo Master and it's driven us insane? Now Sam's the master, and I love that. Sam in return tells him that he has the air of wizards about him, which I agree, because he's giving wisdom. Like, if I had to use one word to describe Faramir, I think I would just say wise. Personally. So yeah, big fan, huge fan of Faramir by the end of this exchange. So that's it for this chapter. Do you have any thoughts before we pick an MVP?
During Sam's huff up, as he's ramping up, he makes an offhand comment about, it strikes me that folks that take their peril with them into Lorien, like, just one more kind of plug for Lorien and Galadriel. And it didn't really pertain to the chapter, but I loved to see it.
He's going to defend Galadriel till the day he dies. Like, he's up there with Gimli. He just loves the elves.
So I found it to be super adorable, and so I wanted to call it out. But I think that's it from this chapter.
All right, so we've got a tradition where we pick an MVP from the chapters we've read for each episode. Cue the music. Jessica, who would you name as your MVP this episode?
Can I respectfully request that you go first for once?
Absolutely. I have no hesitation. I choose Faramir. Like,
Dang
by
it.
a million. He is an absolute dreamboat. And he was trying to do his best by Frodo and Sam. He mentions that he could literally, I think he says he could literally be sentenced to death for like allowing them to be there and not taking them straight to Gondor, right? But he wants to do the right thing instead of the thing the law says he needs to do, right? It was something like that. That resonated with me so hard. And then when it comes down to it, before he even found out what Isildur's Bane was, he basically reasoned it out, right? It was something from back then. It can be used, whatever. Somebody found it. The hobbits have it now. You're on a mission about it. Like, he had he's just a little detective. And then he found out what it actually was. Didn't even ask to see it. No questions asked. Other than, where are you going? I'd like to help you. Just, Peter Jackson did him dirty. He is an excellent human being, like the pinnacle of men here, right up there with Aragorn. And yeah, I love to see it. Big fan of Faramir from this sequence. What about you?
So it really did help me to let you go first. So I was torn between Frodo and Faramir. And I'm going to pick Frodo, not because you picked Faramir, but your decisiveness, just for whatever reason, helped me lock in. I feel like I have to give it up for Frodo in this read, because he is doing the deed. You know, it is not glorious or glamorous or anything related. It's not adventurous. It's not fun. It's none of those things. And it is abundantly clear at this point in their travel that it's not. And he is doing the things. He is wrestling with himself. He is keeping an eye on Gollum, trying to find the best path forward, trying to keep an eye on Sam in his own way. And just the way that he met Faramir head to head, did not flinch, did not back down, did not lie. You know, there was a part where he said, I did not lie to you, and I told you all of the truth that I felt that I could. And I was like, heck yeah. Yeah. So I really, my heart is with Frodo this read.
Yeah, it's a strong choice for sure. Without a doubt. I don't know, Faramir just was like a beacon of light for me, but I totally get the Frodo choice. As always, those of you listening, if you want to weigh in on the MVP, feel free to tweet us or let us know in the comments on YouTube, or get into the Discord and let us know who your personal MVP is, because I love hearing your all's takes, even if they're not the same as mine. I promise it doesn't upset me at all.
So that's it for us tonight. We would ask you for next week to please read Book 4, Chapters 6 through 8. We both want to say thank you so much for tuning in to Episode 6 of Season 3 of But Are There Dragons, brought to you by your hosts Jessica Sadai and Kritter XD. Please don't forget to follow us at But Are There Dragons on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, and But Dragons, just one T, on X.
But Dragons Pod.
I do that every time. But Dragons Pod, just one T, on X. You can also find us on social media as Kritter XD and Shelf Indulgence. That's it for today. We are going to continue to workshop new catchphrases through Season 3, so let us know on social media or in the Discord how you feel about this one. Farewell, dear listener. We must each go swiftly on the ways appointed to us. Bye.
Bye.